All right, just use that camera. I hereby call to order the meeting of the Erie County Capital Projects Committee for June 29, 2026. We'll call the roll. Myself, I am here. Chairman Tim Myers. Here. Controller Kevin Hardwick. Here. Majority Leader John Gilmore. Finance and Management Chair Mike Shoyan. Minority Leader John Mills. Here. Budget Director Mark Cornell is not here. It was being represented by Ray Noseworthy, Deputy Budget Director. Deputy County Executive Lisa Shamara. Here. Commissioner Bill Gary. Present. Commissioner Dan Castle. Here. Commissioner Troy Schinzel. Here. Attorney Jeremy Toth. We have 8. We have a quorum. In your packet of materials will be a copy of the minutes of last week's meeting from June 22nd, 2026. Is there any comments or questions with regards to the minutes of the meeting? Hearing none, can I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented? So moved. Motion from Chair Myers, or a second? Second. Second from Commissioner Gary. Any further comments or discussions? Hearing none, all of those in favor signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carried unanimously. All right, we have a number of capital project proposals from different agencies today. The first one being from the District Attorney's Office. So, Mr. District Attorney, team, the voting with their yours. And if you could just identify yourself for the record.
So Mike Kane, Erie County District Attorney, here with Joe Spino and Laura Herzog also. Ready? Good. So this proposal is for new carpeting on the 6th and 7th floors, which is primarily where our office is located. We have approximately 200 people that work for us in that office space, in addition to dozens of witnesses and victims that traffic that area throughout the course of every workday. The proposal calls for the replacement or I should say the removal and replacement of this carpet that's 22 years old. The carpet useful life originally is reported being 10 to 15 years. We're now at 22 years. I have some photos in the slideshow, if you can just advance it 1 or 2. It shows that, some of the areas of wear and tear. There are some specific areas that are, in sort of more heavily trafficked areas that are, particularly unsafe, quite honestly. And the areas are frayed, there's areas of the carpet that are being, that are separated. We have replaced in a patchwork way several areas already over the years. And we're looking to replace the whole thing in sort of one quick job. I will say that we have, I think in some of the other slides, we have some of the work that we've done. That's it right there, actually. So this work we did 2 years ago. We just finished this. It started 2 years ago. We just finished it several months ago, and this was a project to make the place more secure. A couple of years ago, we had about 30 people come and sit right in the middle of our office space. They were protesting a particular case that we handled, and they came right into our space. We could not get them out without creating a ready-made video for CNN. And they basically sat there and disrupted our entire work operation. They ordered food and beverages. They were there for about 3 hours. Our office has always been open. It's really the only law enforcement office in the entire county that was open and accessible to the public. It was not only a problem for that particular day, but we have people coming in, and I know other departments have experienced it. We have people coming in with video cameras and wanting to take videos of, the work that we do, much of which is confidential. We have witnesses coming in and out, children, women that are in domestic violence situations. And so we did this project a couple of years ago with money that we had parked and set aside from our own budget. And, so the point in mentioning that is we're asking for this project to be paid for out of capital projects because of, not only the wear and tear, but also quite honestly that it's not exactly safe in some of the specific areas. And I will also note, if you could just move ahead one or two more slides, there are a number of most of the other office space in the building when the building was originally renovated have been done. I know the county legislature's been redone. The carpets I'm talking about specifically. The grand jury area, which is in the basement, that's all been redone. Many of the courtrooms in our office, by the way, participated in the funding for some of the courtrooms that it's been recently renovated. And so happy to answer any questions, but that's it. That's basically the presentation.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the district attorney and his team?
Thank you.
Hearing none, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda are two projects from Central Police Services. Commissioner Brian Ross.
Good afternoon, everybody. Again, I'm Commissioner Brian Ross, Central Police Services. Arlene Hoffman is up here with me. She's also on our staff and has been around for quite a bit of time and has helped me usher in several things. So we have two capital projects. I'll start with the first one, which kind of dovetails with the district attorney's office. We're looking at capital funding of $418,518 to refresh our loggers, servers, and licensing for our WOMAC 911 recording system. CPS is required to maintain the system, which provides recordings for all 911 calls, all radio traffic, and all text 911 transcripts. We do this because it's part of the discovery process for the district attorney's office, as well as local law enforcement investigation units. And we provide this useful information to them in a timely manner. This system is at end of life, and we require this upgrade to maintain our capabilities, make sure that we are meeting our legally and operation requirements that are there. We're asking for the funding provided by the capital projects to upgrade this system. Any questions on that?
Are there any comments or questions? How old is the existing system? Do you know?
5 years old.
What's the average lifespan? 5 years.
We're at the end of the servers, yes, because they're recording, so they've got moving parts.
How long do they have to keep the 911 recordings for?
It is a policy that is set by every agency. New York State only makes us keep them 30 days or 90 days, but we go for 3 years at request of the DA's office.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. What's the next one?
Second one is kind of a reboot. Last year I came before this body to request capital funding of $2.5 million to create a secondary 911 call center / hot backup. This body did approve that $2.5 million last year, but come bonding time this year, we ran into a couple hiccups, which forced us to table it. Coming back this year, asking for $1.52 million because we found additional funding from a Next Gen 911 grant that will allow us to put a little over $900,000 towards this project. Problem is, there are rules to that grant that do not allow us to fund any kind of furniture and radio. So we're asking for the capital funding to take care of the rest. The reason we're doing this is simple. We are a single point of failure when it comes to our 911 system. We have a backup at Broadway. The guts of our system are at Broadway. It is our secondary location now, but it is very, it's wonky at best. It's laptops. It takes a while to spin it up. We're looking to have something that's going 24/7, 365 that is constantly manned, so that if anything ever happens at 45 Elm Street, and we have to shut down there, we're up and running at Broadway, and it gives us capacity to send people down there to keep business flowing. And also the additional 18 workstations that we're trying to put out there will allow us to have other agencies come to that location in the event that there is any kind of PSAP consolidation in the future. So that is, any other questions regarding that?
What was the request last year?
2.5.
And that was for, so the 1.5 will cover a portion of it and you have a grant for the rest?
Yeah, the grant just simply would not allow us to buy furniture. We would love to, we got 1.9 in the Next Gen grant, sort of got us a large way there, but unfortunately that grant has stipulations that you cannot use that funding for furnishing or radios, which is you know, the issue we're having with this. Why we're asking for capital funding to cover that part.
Is it state or federal
State grant.
grant? Any other comments or questions from people?
Can you tell me what happens now if something happens at Elm Street? I mean, a fire, a bomb threat, whatever, and you have to clear that with, you know, for the next 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, what happens to my 911 call?
Yep, so our staff will leave that location and start heading to Broadway. In the interim, we send out the calls to our other larger PSAPs, our Amherst, our Tonawanda, and they take on that volume. They're not equipped to take on that. Obviously, for a city like Buffalo, which is our primary customer, so that really bogs down the system. We're hoping this is a solution where we're out there and if something happens.
So it does go someplace.
It goes somewhere. It overwhelms the system, and then the time takes us to get split up. 40-minute drive, getting the laptops out, spinning it up. You're talking significant delay in having and even that, you know, we purchased a lot of things at CPS that allow us to map rapid SOS, and that stuff requires lots of screens, and we don't have as many screens in the laptops that we split up. So there is a loss there that I find to be kind of something we should be able to resolve and rectify.
So with this project, what do you envision? I mean, would it absolutely mirror what you have at Elm Street, or would it be scaled down, or
Nope, it's
exactly the same?
Full 18 fully functioning workstations. So that's where our economy of scale. Give us a little bit more depth and breadth to our operation. And again, if it ever gets to a point where a local PSAP wishes to consolidate, we'll have a place to land. So we're looking kind of down the road, but it's also giving us redundancy that we need yesterday as far as having this system, a backup system.
Have you considered anything smaller, anything scaled down, sort of a middle ground, or is that not feasible?
Well, I think that's kind of what we already have. The scaled out version of what we have at the EOC currently, laptops that kind of you can get going.
At our current center, we actually have 35 911 workstations
Mhm.
and 4 radio only for Buffalo. So this is a scale.
Together, we have a room that would be dedicated to it. You just walk in and flip on the
Well,
switch.
moreover, it's staff. No, our expectation is to staff it daily. So to have personnel there every single day working so that in the event Elm goes down, there are people there answering calls at Broadway as well, because our people another place to go. And we have one functioning every day. So there's no spinning up. It's already up and running every day.
Any other questions from folks?
How many PSAPs are there?
We have 15.
Depends on what day you
Yeah,
ask.
depends. Because we just lost 10 more, became a PSAP again. I think 15 primary and 4 secondary.
3 fire moved to us, so 3 secondary.
3 secondary.
I know Monroe County has what, 2?
2.
1, 2.
That was one.
They got a main one and a backup, and then there's one small town that does it by themselves, just really.
Yeah, we've explored and looked at that. That's something we're against. However, their number of dispatchers and call takers is substantially more than what we have, correct?
Yes, they have
Yes.
about 168 personnel. Now that we have MERS part of our team at CPS, we have about 65.
So it would reduce costs for the towns, the cities, and the villages substantially, but Erie County's cost would go up. Let's see. Any other comments or questions? If not, thank you. Our friends from Homeland Security Emergency Services.
And I think for the point too about the backup system, we saw what happened when we hit the wrong button, the public safety campus, and it killed everything. So pushed it out to a lot of the different PSAPs. But when you have the city of Buffalo and everybody else, it very quickly overwhelmed the smaller dispatches.
I don't think everyone here knows what you mean when they said they hit the wrong button.
So essentially the power was shut off and we disconnected from the system.
Our folks did it.
It's a collective.
And you wanted to remind us of that?
Well, I just wanted to kind of, because Commissioner Ross wasn't there at the time, so I just wanted to use that as an example of why it's critical that we have a redundant system.
Wasn't that the button that says do not,
For the love of God, don't touch this
don't
button
touch this
ever.
button, and they.
Got that?
Also read
Red, it's red, it's plunger,
Not joking.
Yeah, it was,
it's the if all else fails.
it wasn't a reboot like this. This, we know it took a long time. You can go to the first slide. I'm not sure which one, what the order is. Okay. So our work in progress, last year we did come to the committee and we requested funding to enhance communications throughout Erie County, but also in partnerships with our contiguous counties, coming up with a new communication system, updating a system that is quite honestly falling apart day by day and requires a considerable amount of maintenance. So we actually decided what we wanted to do to go through this project is to come up with something new and innovative. We thank this committee for coming up with the initial funding for that last year. We said that the total of this project would be $30 million. We're working and having many discussions with everybody, the legislature, the budget, county executive and others. We decided that for this year's bonding or 26's bonding, 20 million would be appropriate. So we're actually moving forward right now in this capital project. We've got the 20 million bonded from last year's funding. The RFPs have gone out for this particular system itself, the trunking system. They have been reviewed. We're going to be before the legislature on Wednesday to hopefully have a contract approved with a vendor to do that first outbuild of this particular project itself. The vendor was selected through our RFP process, but it's a rather complicated process too, because it actually does go beyond the process of just building this out with someone, because then there's other contractors that are going to have to be involved. So phase one would be to build out hardware, tower sites, things that we need to do to be able to get the system up and running parallel to the current system. So we're already there with regards to funding. There will be funding from that, some of that funding left over, which then takes us into the next phase, which is actually coming up with the end user equipment for this particular project itself. You can go to the next slide. So just to give you an idea, this trunk system is being utilized by all of the county agencies, including the largest of them all, the sheriff's office, but also our department, DPW, buildings and grounds, anyone that right now has something that's on our system, but they're kind of going out as individual departments, purchasing radios, getting things repaired, doing what they need to do to stay on the air. We're the backbone, but they need to, work through other vendors and whatnot to make sure that their equipment is. So this pulls all of the departments within the county together, this system. But more importantly, it then gives us the opportunity to go outside, because small communities like Orchard Park or Kenmore, they're having issues right now coming up with their own individual communication systems. So the total cost of this to get this up and running, including equipment, microwave relays, is 30 million. So that's where we're coming to you for the secondary 10 million, which we weren't going to ask for the 30 million upfront out of the 26, because we needed to make sure that, we were walking before we ran. So we don't need the equipment just yet. We need to build the system. And then the 10 million will be utilized for the equipment and the backup to refresh the actual microwave itself. That'll then give us the opportunity to go out to other communities that might be interested in joining it. And then we'd have to come up with some type of board to be able to come up with whatever their buy-in would be to this, or if the county wanted to absorb the entire cost itself. You can go to the next slide. So what we need today is we need to come up with the final $10 million. As we said, last year we pitched 30, working through budget. The bonding this year for what we needed to get this accomplished in 26 was the 20 million. So we're there. But this is just to reinforce that we do need the additional 10 million, which is the end user equipment, because the current radios that DPW are using, or we're using, or other agencies, have to be compatible with this new system itself. So what we are asking for is the funding for that, to be able to purchase the equipment for the system that we're building currently. And the rest of that will be utilized to refresh the microwave, which is the redundancy that brings the signal back and forth to be able to communicate with all of these first responder agencies. So it's critical. I believe we've got the RFP out already and coming back with regards to the next phase of this, which would be the microwave system. But it's a kind of a complex thing. We're moving forward, hope to have approval on Wednesday for phase one, which we have the funding for, and then continue to move this on. If you want to go to the next slide, I just wanted to highlight this because I like to just give everybody the heads up on things. These are the type of things, the funding challenges that we run into with regards to the ongoing maintenance of the system itself. There's generators at each of these sites. We're responsible for maintaining those generators. Some of those sites don't belong to us, so buildings and grounds can't maintain those generators. The roofs on some of these communications huts begin to fail. We have a project right now that's approaching $1 million just to protect that. So what we are looking for, and just foreshadowing, is with the magnitude of this, including all the outside agencies that are out there that are looking forward to being a part of this program here, there are going to be some continuing ongoing costs. It's a never-ending battle. But that's for that project in particular, we're looking for the $10 million this year.
Question with regards to phase one, timing in phase two. Assuming our friends in the legislature approve the RFP vendor, how long would it take to implement phase one and get it completed so that then you need phase two equipment to be in place so that the system could be activated?
So the way that we're looking at this is if it is approved on Wednesday, which we hope that it is, we then have to enter into the contract negotiation stage with that particular vendor. We are hoping that by the end of this year and by the middle of next year, that the system itself will be somewhat up and ready for some testing, so that by the end of 27, that's when we hope that we can actually start to gradually migrate all of the different departments to that. So the end of 27, the system would be up and running. But to do all of the testing and the things that we need to do, we're going to have to start to purchase equipment. Once we get the vendor on, we're going to have to identify with the other RFP that's out there, the microwave, because there's one vendor that would do this, and then there's another completely separate vendor when we select them that's going to be doing the microwave. They have to get together, be compatible. So what we're looking for realistically is to be able to have this completed sometime in 2028.
Any comments or questions from
Does
these?
committing the $10 million to phase one, does that mean we're in for the rest of it also, or can this be seen as an end in of itself if things change?
So essentially, the 20 million was originally a $30 million ask,
Right.
but because we would be bonding an extra $10 million for this particular year that would just sit there and would not be utilized, it was deemed, working with budget and others, that we would move that this year. So that's why we're asking for essentially the remainder of what we asked for last year to be able to do that, because it did make sense to have it in our account and then not be able to do the equipment purchases or to purchase those particular radios. And 6 months from now, we're taking 6 months off the life of something that has maybe a 5 or 6 year life expectancy.
We committed to this project when we moved ahead with the first phase of the 20 million. Any other comments or questions? Not? One more?
All right. I'm just gonna go off of my slide. So this next one kind of dovetails with what Commissioner Ross was talking about there with regards to expansion of the academy. Go to the next slide. All right, so we're here the last couple of years working with Commissioner Geary and others and environment and planning. We've all partnered together just to walk rather than run. We have an idea of what it is we need out at the Fire Training Academy, what we need for emergency operations centers, what we need to make it more compatible, but we're going to be going through a process. So we heard that, and what we have right now is a needs assessment out there. We actually have an RFP that will be due back, I believe, sometime within the next 2 weeks. That RFP will take a look at just exactly what it is we need to do to expand or to make that more of a compliant facility with regards to the plans that we have. You heard about the plans to put in the backup 911 center. Part of the problem with that is we are reducing capacity at the training center by 2 classrooms in order to do that. So we're taking a look at the big picture of things here with the RFP. I think we had something like 15 different companies that are interested that came, did a walkthrough for the RFP to try and to try and come up with how can we be more efficient out there. So what we decided to do is we came up with more or less phased in. We're looking at the RFP. As I said, we're walking before we run. We have the phased in construction here that we're going to be looking for. And we also want to make sure that there's that regulatory compliance that comes along with that too. Go to the next slide. Next couple of slides, actually. Just kind of an overview of the academy. Next one. One more. All right, this one kind of brings us to what our vision is. But as we've learned over the years with regards to working with outside consultants and whatnot, what we want doesn't necessarily always make the most sense. So that's why we have the RFP. That's why they're taking a look at it and seeing, what's the best way to go about doing this. You can see the call center here, how much room that takes up. So what we're trying to do is maximize. If you have a call center, essentially, if you want to go to the next slide, please. I think we showed you this before too. Just wanted to get the visuals, but just wanted to highlight a couple of different things here. It's a multi-purpose facility, as we know. It's at capacity just about every day. In some cases, it's even Sunday. We've got the 911 backup proposal. We've got the RFP out there that takes into consideration a lot of different things, including that expansion, where you might have people there 24/7 because it's a dispatch center. So the ADA compliance, restrooms, locker rooms, kitchen sizes, and everything. And if you go to the next slide, you'll just get an idea too of just what exactly we're talking about here. The campus right now, we're busting at the seams with a lot of different things, including storage issues. So we've got a very, very small kitchen. The kitchen on the second floor of the public safety campus is actually larger than the kitchen that we have out there for a 24/7 facility. The restrooms need to be refreshed. There's a number of different things. Space utilization. There's so many things that are props and things like that from years ago that we don't necessarily need anymore. That upper left-hand corner is a drafting pit. Back in the days when most fire companies didn't have hydrants. So they would go and they would practice there. They would practice drafting from ponds and from lakes and from pools and things like that. So what we're trying to do is come up with a complete refresh, but also something that's more compatible with all of the challenges that we're faced with day to day, new trainings, etc. So if you want to go to pretty much the last slide here, what we are requesting is $6.5 million for this portion of the refresh itself, working with, as we have, Central Police Services. We've also thrown a considerable amount of money through our grant funding into that 911 project and some other things here. We do have, at least for now, congressional funding appropriations approval. Where it goes once it gets, into the mix of things, but there's considerable amount of money that we put in for there too. So right now, congressionally directed spending is $4.5 million. And we've also submitted for a VFAR, which is a state grant, for $1 million to actually do repairs to the main tower out the back, which currently can't be utilized because PESH has essentially shut it down. So what we're trying to do is tie it all together, work very closely with all of our departments to make sure that we dot all the I's and cross all the T's, but at the same time, working with Central Police Services to make that backup center a place where people can actually be for 24/7. And at the same time, that federal funding we applied for has to be utilized specifically for Emergency Operations Center. So it would have to be focused, and the language which we had a little bit of an issue with was it has to be focused on Emergency Operations Center, a room, as opposed to a classroom or other types of expansion. So be happy to answer any of your questions with regards to that or anything I didn't.
Where are you relative to the seeker process?
So the secret process, we're hoping will be completed within, by the end of the year.
I mean, you anticipate a negative declaration?
I don't think we anticipate. We've done extensive work with environment and planning and.
Yeah, so we're working with you guys on that. So this study that we're doing now, it's a space utilization study. So it'll try to create a master plan for that site, look at how you can best utilize it. So that should be like a 6-7 month study, and then that would be followed by seeker.
To your question, I don't think there'll be a negative plan. There won't be any impasse from the
Right, negative declaration.
You said there's a $4.5 million or so grant. You're asking for $6.5 million here, so are you saying this is actually an $11 million project?
At least an $11 million project.
What happens if we don't get the grant?
Well, so the way we're looking at this is a phased approach based on what it is we have versus necessarily ultimately where we need to go. The first step is we're hoping to get some positive answers back. We know what we know, but what we're really hoping to come back from the RFP is the suggestions that are going to help us to merge the 911 center, the backup of the 911 center, to have us with that additional capacity that we need and to better utilize what we already have. So this isn't even exploring necessarily from this funding, the land acquisition portion of things. We're looking more at just what can we do to make that academy more efficient, and utilize the fact that we're losing 2 classrooms. So we're going to have to do something. So if it's an addition that's to the tune of the funding we have, then that's within that master plan. That's where we want to go. But we don't want to just keep kicking this further down the road, because we know that, as do you, that capacity there is exceeded on a regular basis.
One final question. This is to expand the facility, but not for land acquisition. Is that the general assumption?
So the general assumption is this would be taking the existing structure or structures that are there and making them more functional. So it would be, in some cases, again, we don't have pictures of it, but if you went into the main tower in the building there's a lot of underutilized space. There's probably 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square feet of underutilized space straight up. So when we walked with the consultants, we showed them those type of areas. There's plenty of room to go up, and there's plenty of room to go out without additional land acquisition at this point. But that's what we all feel. That's what this RFP hopefully will come back and say, this along the lines of the master plan for the fire training academy, the classrooms, more importantly, the EOC and the 911. This can all be contained within here. And then if we go to the next phase of that, which was, the grand plan of having a public safety campus, could that be within that footprint too? So the RFP is actually there's a number of different steps. The ones we're most interested in right now, though, is what can we do to improve the.
When would you anticipate, if you choose on the RFP, the party, when would you anticipate having the needs assessment completed?
Well, I think we're working on the needs
So
assessment.
we're, proposals are due, next Monday. So
if you should, let's assume you're certainly not going to approve before the legislature goes on break. But let's say you approved it in September. So what is the expectation for the needs assessment portion of it to be completed?
So it's about 6-7 month schedule. So April, May, on here.
So you should have an answer as to what you would like to do by definitely this time next year. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
I know the facility is used by other municipalities for training purposes. Does anyone reimburse us?
There is a legislative resolution that allows us to do that, but for the most part, we don't bump our training in favor of, and there's just so much training that's going on out there. Chris can give you an idea of the numbers. We're constantly training those rooms. If I need it for a special meeting, I have to request that maybe somebody else take a different room. It's that active, and it's not just Monday through Friday. It's Monday through Sunday, and it's not just during regular work hours or the evening when the volunteers are out there. It's constant, and that's why losing 2 classrooms, whereas we are working with Central Police Services and feel very, very strongly that we need this backup. We're also a little bit protected by the fact that we're losing 2 classrooms. And you could send people other places for classroom training, but when you're doing training, classroom education, and then you're taking them outside to the props themselves, that it's not conducive to doing the classroom offsite and then bringing them in for that. So that's what we're trying to do. But do we have that? We can do that. We would love to do that, but right now we don't have the capacity to. We're not going to kick out the volunteers, or we're not going to pick up community groups that are utilizing it for Homeland Security trainings.
I think it's worth mentioning that unlike Monroe County, who has a wonderful center, don't get me wrong, ours are multi-use. They have day-to-day, Monday through Friday, blue sky day, classroom optics that they're working. And then their emergency operations center functions on the other side, whether it's a planning room or a media room or the whole host of different things, policy group meeting rooms, everything has a multi-function. So there's a huge economy to be had. And Dan likes to mention to us that we're pretty proud of statewide. We do this better than anyone else when it comes to multi-use of each of our rooms. So that has not left any of this planned. They still will be multi-use. EOC on one side, training and education on the other side.
You know, we not only exceed our state allotment of hours annually, but we actually almost double it, because areas that aren't using it, the state will then send those hours to us, and we utilize those. So we're packed, and we're happy to make the big go up quicker, but there's a definite need out there for some TLC.
Any other comments or questions? None, thank you. Okay, real property tax services.
Good afternoon, Scott Palevsky, Director of Real Property Tax Services. I have with me Charles Gardner, Supervising Tax Accountant with Real Property Tax Services. Our ask for capital project is $135,000, and it's basically to update and replace and repair a lot of the worn, tired, frayed, and broken parts and pieces of the office. We're looking at replacing the carpet, which is over 15 years in age. The expected life was 10 years. We've gotten well over that out of it, as well as then to change the layout and provide replacement furnishings in the office. It's well overdue. The conference room chairs are broken. We need to replace those. This project has been put together by visiting both with Prentice and DPW Buildings and Grounds. We've had multiple meetings, including that practical visit over at Prentice, which was very instructive. We're looking at the visual spacing, use of patterns, as well as white noise, which becomes important when we have a lot of people that we're looking to get into the space that need to be able to focus and concentrate, whether they're doing the mapping work of taking a deed and transcribing it over to a map, or doing the accounting work and making sure that the appropriate dollars are put into the appropriate accounts. It's a very simple ask for the $135,000. It's a well overdue ask, and that's what we're looking for.
This would not change the square footage layout of the location. It would just change the design of it.
Make better use of the square footage, including adding additional spacing for the potential of the assessing division, which is the goal here.
Is there anything that's like being taken out, like the old storage or tax map area, or is it all staying? It's moving.
It's all staying. It's being converted and reconfigured.
And some of the, in addition, some improvements we're having. Currently, the tax mappers lean over a table, which is lower than this. Most of the tax mappers are high. The drawings are large, so there's a lot of strain on the tax mappers. So this does include something more capable for a tax mapper or drawer to actually be level and proper posture for dealing with the mapping area.
Any other comments or questions? There's your knee back.
Moving.
You're walking without anything. That's good. So no elevator, no exoskeleton.
Yeah.
The elevator didn't help.
Elephant works. There's
Not going up. It wasn't taking a bad story.
Yeah. No other comments or questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
And, final for the day, Council of Social Services, Youth Services. All right, thank you.
Hello, I'm Mary Ellen Brockmeyer from Social Services. We are here seeking approval for two projects. First is a social services project to fully renovate the fourth floor of the Rack building, which is adjoined to 158 Pearl. This is the last of the floors that we're seeking approval for renovating. It houses our daycare operations, financial records, the countywide cashier, the countywide mailroom, and temporary assistance services, including a portion of homeless, domestic violence, emergency services, and general temporary assistance operations. The full project cost is $5.5 million. However, we have $1 million remaining from a previous capital project. And the local share for the project is at approximately 42% for $1.9 million.
Any comments or questions? If this one was approved and completed, is there any expectation of large renovations in the Rath building, or is that with this completed?
This would fully complete everything.
Any further comments or questions? If none, on to the youth services.
The next project is youth services. It's our final pod to be hardened. It's the dark blue pod, which is a 16-bed living unit. The total project cost for the hardening of the pod, as well as replacement of the flooring in the lobby and intake areas, and replacement of the water fountains in the pods which the youth use, is $5.6 million. We do anticipate minimum reimbursement of 69%. Leaving the local share at 31% or $1.7 million. We expect that number of state reimbursement will go up. The state will analyze to determine how much they will fund through Raise the Age, which is at 100% funding. So we have gotten 100% state funding for our other pods, with the exception of wear and tear replacement or things outside of the living unit.
And can you confirm that I heard correctly that this would be the last pod to be hardened?
Yes.
So that would complete all the pods there?
That's correct.
What would happen with the 16 units? They'd be moved where during the, because we sometimes have pretty tight there. Yeah.
We're in full construction right now for our light blue pod, which is an 8-bed living unit. We had historically opened or had our green pod, which is an 8-bed unit for dealing with high behaviors. We've moved all of our light blue people there and have shut down 8 beds, which hasn't changed our ability to serve the public as referrals come through. We would reduce our census with the state to, it's a 64-bed facility, so we would take 16 offline, reduce it to 48. We haven't really even been touching the 48. So we don't really anticipate any change in capacity. In the event that we did, we would have to send Erie County kids to other facilities throughout the state.
What's the next closest facility here?
Monroe.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
That completes the presentations for today. We do have a public comment period. If there are any members of the public here in person or on the video conference who would like to make a comment, now is the time to do so. See no members of the public here. There's no one online wishing to comment. Thank you. We've now met our requirements. The next meeting will be next Monday, July 6th. With presentations from the Department of Information Support Services, the library system, and Parks, Recreation, and Water Street. If there's no further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So move from, Chair Myers, a second from, Minority Leader Mills. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Here, adjourned. Happy 4th of July, everyone. Thanks.